panelists. So first we have Dr. Isabel Malone, who is a core faculty member at the University of Chicago in the section of emergency medicine, where she's also in her second year of her medical education fellowship. For her fellowship, she is focusing on understanding the decisions made by underrepresented minorities in medicine when they choose a residency program, and is working to build on anti-racism curriculum for the emergency medicine residents at the University of Chicago. She graduated from our very own Loyola Stritch in 2016, did emergency medicine residency at Emory in Atlanta, where she fell in love with Southern food and people and genuinely enjoys meeting new folks and eating all sorts of food. She is a first-generation immigrant from the Dominican Republic and is the first medical doctor in her family. So welcome, thank you so much. And I also wanted to give a warm welcome to Dr. Ray Mendez, who is a physician, a family physician, also from Chicago, dedicated to serving the global Latinx community. Dr. Mendez is the founding physician of Mi Medico, a primary care clinic located in Chicago's predominantly Mexican neighborhood of Pilsen. Dr. Mendez also works at the emergency department extension at Ingalls Memorial Hospital and spends time as an, excuse me, as a clinical educator in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. Dr. Mendez is honored to serve on the board of directors at the Health and Medicine Policy Research Group, an organization that conducts research, educates, and collaborates with stakeholders to advocate for equitable health policies that impact health system. Dr. Mendez takes annual trips to work in Nicaragua with aspirations of creating a sustainable community-run primary care clinic in the country. So just wanted to give a warm welcome for FLY and the Stritch community. We feel that this is a group that needed more attention at Stritch. And you know, sometimes it's hard to find other people who identify as you, and it can be very isolating. And so I think this panel is going to be a great way for all of us to get some guidance and just sort of be a support system for one another. So I'll let the physicians take it away. I gave them some of our most requested questions, but if you guys have any questions of your own, feel free to text me or text them in the chat and I can ask them as we go along. All right, so you guys can take it away.
Hey everyone, I'm sorry, I'm driving actually to my shift. And so I'm gonna ask Isabel to kind of start the conversation and then I can chime in since I don't have access to the questions in front of me. Apologies.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I think that this panel is awesome, and I think you guys developed, is this a group that you guys developed?
Yeah, so it's part of the MSU, it's a committee, yeah.
Okay, no, that's great. I think it's wonderful. So I think, are the questions the one that you just sent us, like your med school journey to become as a first generation low income student?
Yeah, so I can just do like a quick recap. So we're really interested in your med school journey as a FLY student, your current career path, what you wish you knew as a medical student resident, any pertinent advice moving forward, mentorship, and then just open questions. So however you want to take it.
Yeah. So I tend to like things when they're a bit more informal. So if you guys have questions right off the bat about anything that I'm talking about, you can either actually, you know, like turn on your video or leave it off and talk, or you can just put it in the chat as mentioned. But I guess I'll start. I grew up as one of 6 kids, moved here when I was 7 from the Dominican Republic, and didn't really like, we were uninsured most of our lives. Like my parents were both professionals in the, my mom was a nurse and my dad was a journalist in the Dominican Republic. When we moved here, basically my parents, like my dad started driving a taxi in Michigan in the middle of the winter as a Caribbean man. I don't know how he didn't kill anybody or himself, but like that's how he put food on the table with tips. And then my mom started working multiple jobs cleaning. So she would clean at hotels and then also businesses after hours. And that's basically how I grew up. So I was typically like uninsured. I didn't really have a lot of access to healthcare, much less access to any healthcare mentors. But education's like always been really important to my family. And so growing up, I was like really nerdy. And I think that was like one of the best things that ever happened to me because I just read all the time and was really invested in education. And my parents always found a way to like put us into, if not private schools, like the scholarship kids at private schools, or we would be in public schools on a very like specialized magnet program or tract. And so my parents are really, really big on education. And I don't know, I couldn't really talk to people. I could read and write and do math. And that's what kind of got me to where I am now. I ended up going to Hope College in Holland, Michigan, which is like this teeny tiny liberal, this like liberal arts school in Michigan. And I thought I was going to major in English and then maybe be a teacher. Found out that I have no patience to be a teacher and ended up just doing chemistry because I thought it was fun. And I think I knew second year of undergrad that I wanted to be a doctor, but it seemed like completely out of reach, totally out of reach. Like knew no doctors personally, didn't even have a primary care doctor. The first time I had insurance was when I was in college because I had to have it. So I kind of was what my roommate would call a closeted pre-med. And I literally just kind of took all the prereqs, but always said I was going to do like environmental science. And then kind of like covertly applied, took the MCAT, had to get scholarships for my for the Kaplan prep class. And then I got into med school. So that's like a little bit of background about me. Ray, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Um, Beautiful story, Isabel. I didn't know that much about you. We went to med school together.
We did.
Well, cause I didn't know you that well. I thought I did, but yeah. so, so I grew up. My parents immigrated from Mexico, different parts of Mexico. My dad's from Oaxaca. My mom from Iowa studying business. They came here undocumented, actually, and so they did have a lot of those struggles that families without papers do have. I know that comes from that doesn't just impact Mexicans. Have people from Asia, even Europe, other parts of Latin America. So I know you guys may have seen those struggles in your families. They did eventually get papers about 10 years later after they got in, and I think that made all the world of difference for them. They were able to apply for. I was fortunate enough to get Medicaid. Similarly, my parents still ask me for money. So they're a unique set of individuals that really put. They lived a traditional Mexican family where my mom stayed at home, took care of the 4 kids, and my dad worked his 2 or 3 jobs. Like Isabel's parents, kind of working 24/7 to provide. And we were lucky enough to get Medicaid. My mom was notorious about getting the public aid because that's the way she contributed to it. I never had private insurance until I was actually at Loyola for medical school. I was uninsured for a few years during college, kind of the opposite of Isabel. I was insured for most of my life until I went to college, and then when I got into medical school, I did get private insurance. I went to a small liberal arts college like Isabel, Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois. I was really there just to try to find my sanity and trying to find what I wanted to do with my life. I wasn't sure I wanted to be a doctor. I actually wanted to be an artist. Well, my dad wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor. So I majored in art. What was that?
I just said typical immigrant family, like art. Cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They're like, make money. That's what. So don't be. I wouldn't be surprised if you guys had that similar experience. And yeah, so I majored in art. Majored in biology and art. And in the end, wasn't sure what to do because I can't do anything with a biology degree except medical school probably, or some grad school. So I ended up going to volunteer and kind of find myself after college. Went to Nicaragua for like 3 or 4 months, traveled throughout Latin America, and then came back, took the MCAT, bombed it because I didn't study for it, because I didn't know how to study, because I didn't really learn how to study in undergrad. And then I went to go volunteer in the Dominican Republic at a Dominican orphanage for it's like a Catholic orphanage called Nuestros Pequeños Hermanos for 2.5 months. I think during that year, I really solidified I wanted to go to medical school. So then I went to a grad school actually and got a research degree, a master's degree in research. Realized I didn't like bench research, but used it to apply to medical school and got in and went to Loyola. And so, you know, it was a tough journey because I didn't have it like Isabel. I didn't have any mentors. My dad worked for a lot of doctors because he started a construction company as his other job became more malignant. He decided to go into start his own business, and he met a good doctor friend that I did shadow during undergrad a little bit. But it was not the kind of medicine I thought anyone would want. It wasn't really enticing, and that's really what deterred me actually from taking a medical degree initially. But then when I traveled abroad, I realized, you know, I wanted to help people, not just from my own country, but from other countries that, you know, come from really, really indigent backgrounds and lack access to healthcare, yet they're amazing people that, you know, would, you know, maybe they're sustenance farmers that just, you know, raise crops for themselves to eat, and yet they'll like they live in a shack, like a wood shack, like a 10 by 10 wood shack, all 10 members of the family, and they would still give you food, and like they give you their food, and it just really changed my life. And I was like, you know, I want to do that. I want to be able to go there and give that care to people, the care that they deserve. And so that's what really drove me to go to medical school. When I went to Loyola, I think going a little bit further into the Loyola experience, it was hard for me. I was it was predominantly, you know, white when I started going there. I was like one of 10 minority Latinx students there. There were a handful of Black students, but it was predominantly white and not that many immigrants. Not that much representation from LGBT, and so it was really like I was like one of the few minorities there. Most of you guys, I'm sure, feel like you don't come from similar backgrounds. You know, I lived with a bunch of people as well, and they came from very different backgrounds. You know, $1 million houses and, you know, laptops. They had like all the Apple products. They had a nice car, and, you know, I didn't have any of that. I just had I had a beater that my dad was buying for me from some guy, and, you know, I bought that, and I had that beater for like 6 years as a car. And so like I really struggled financially, and I felt like really embarrassed about my background because I didn't come from those similar backgrounds, and I felt like people would look down on me for my background because I didn't come from a similar wealthy background, or even like a stable upbringing, given like the financial situation my parents were always in. But, you know, in the end, I think I thought that throughout all of med school. And it wasn't until like my 4th year when it really changed, when I stopped caring about what people thought about me or what they thought about my past. Because in the next years after medical school, I came to realize that really was important for me in my foundation, and identifying my personality and who I wanted to be and who I wanted to help. And I think it made me actually a stronger person having that background, because I didn't have those advantages that they had. And so, like, if you guys come from that kind of background, or are worried or embarrassed about your background, or your parents, because maybe they don't speak the best English, or maybe they came undocumented, or maybe just having a humble upbringing, you know, being on Medicaid, or, you know, not having anyone to look up to, and feeling uncomfortable because you're in a very privileged institution, and you're on track to enter a really privileged field, and privilege meaning in a variety of different ways, but definitely like you're going to have a lot of benefits that other people in the world, especially in the world, but definitely in our own country, will not have access to, things that your parents would have never thought were possible for you. And so it's hard. You're crossing a barrier that your family probably has never even thought they would be able to cross, and you're kind of like their hopes and dreams. But don't let that pressure you, because you're going to do great. Stritch is a really supportive environment. And I'm going to leave it at that, because I think Isabel can probably have something to add to that, and I can talk more about, you know, some of my mentors at Stritch later.
Yeah, no, this is fun. Ray, I do feel like I learned more about you. This is awesome. I just want to echo what Ray said, like, and I just want to put it out there right at the start. money makes everything easier. And if you have money, you might not realize how much easier things are with it. So as someone that like recently, so I'm a fellow, I'm still making fellow money. I'm not making attending money, but um, even the money that I make as a fellow, I am out earning both of my parents right off the bat. And it's not like a lucrative salary, right? So that's the kind of money background that I came from. And so having this, and my husband is an attending. So I just live off of him basically. But like his money makes everything better, right? And I think we cannot say that because we're embarrassed about it. And we don't, I don't know, no one wants to talk about being, you know, and this is my term that I use for myself. I'm not putting that on anyone else, but like I was essentially raised as a poor kid. I've been a poor kid or a scholarship kid in most academic situations that I've gone to. And there is some sort of stigma, like Ray was saying. And I think that kind of like sticks to you. You feel kind of like some way like embarrassed by it. And it's like, it's unfortunate that you can feel that way because in spite of not having resources and in spite of having to find things for yourself and in spite of having to do extra work, you got to the same place as people with resources. Not to say that those people with resources didn't work really hard and don't deserve it. That's not at all what I'm saying, but there is a lot of character building that unfortunately some of us do because we've got no other choice, right? Like I hope my kids don't have to do that type of character building, right? If I have children, but it is there and it is in your background, and I think it is incredibly valuable. Like Ray was saying, like when I found out that like one of my classmates, who I love dearly, she's a wonderful human, she asked me, "Oh, where do you drop off the tuition check?" And I'm like, "Wait, what? Like someone pays for your med school tuition?" Like, "Oh, I get all the loans because I need them to live." And even with loans, whenever I had an issue, like if my 1995 Toyota Corolla that like literally died in the Heinz VA parking lot on the last day of medical school. Like when that thing broke down, I had no one to ask for extra money, right? And so it was like I am like hoarding my loans and I would like try to like everyone says have an emergency fund. Well, like if you don't have resources, you don't have anything. And I remember I guess I'll share this story really quickly. I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but anyways, I traveled with Stritch to I don't know what we call it, but like the summer program in between first year and second year, and I was going abroad. And for some reason, at the last minute, there was an extra $1,000 charge, and I literally had to like go into the financial aid office and broke down 24 hours before I was supposed to get on my flight because like I couldn't come up with it, right? Other people could. I don't know how they could, but I definitely didn't have that. And it was just assumed that like, oh yeah, you can do this, right? Like that's nothing. So little things like that. I feel like we're talking a lot. Does anyone have any questions or any reactions? We can keep talking forever, but you know.
No, this is great so far. I just want to say, like, I appreciate your, like, how candid you guys are. And I really like what you said, Dr. Mullen, about like this culture in medicine, about how like ashamed people are to talk about money, and like you're supposed to go into medicine to want to help others and it's not about money, but at the end of the day, like that is something that you have to work about, and it's easier to say you don't have to care about money when you don't have it. So I do appreciate that. Also relate with the car. I don't have a car. It's an M3 right now, so it's a struggle. But we did have one question. Sorry, did you want to say something, Dr. Mendez?
Go ahead. I was just agreeing.
Yeah, we had one question. If you could go back to Loyola, what was your biggest source of support? And how do you wish you would have been supported as a FLI student?
First of all, I love the term fly. Yeah, so I think if I could go back to Loyola, what was the first part of that question?
What was your biggest support at Loyola? And then how do you wish you could have been supported if you weren't, or just any additional?
Yeah, I was definitely supported by minority faculty and faculty that were like very supportive of minorities that were not minorities. Dr. Krzyzewski who definitely probably reached out to both of us, or got the names from. He was a huge advocate for minorities and definitely for our Latino Medical Student Association, and was one of the he was one of the people that spearheaded the whole kind of reaching out to DACA students and allowing them to get admitted to Stritch. I highly respect him. He helped me so much. He was a huge mentor. Yes, Dr. K is amazing. I actually bought him a T-shirt. I never gave it to him. I feel so bad. I have to give it to him. But and then there was Dean of Diversity, Assistant Dean of Diversity that helped me a lot at the time as well. Dr. Saporu, I think I cut off. Dr. Saporu, she was great. She actually, I did a HPrep program, so the HPrep program over there, and when I did that, I had no idea what the heck, like that it was actually like a thing she could sell, like as like something big that Loyola did, and so she actually was a huge advocate for me and would always look for scholarships for me, because I always told her about my financial situation, because she made me feel comfortable. She was down to earth, kind of like how we all are doing right now, and she was just like, how are things? I was like, I'm living off my loans. It's Loyola is expensive, but it's okay. And then she helped me find an application and apply for something that got me like $5,000, which is really nice. And then Dr. Brubaker, who was the dean then, even I was not close with her at all, but she was super supportive of minorities. And somehow, she became a support network as well. And I just would email her, talk to her, and she was just really hard to reach. But whenever I talked to her, she was super understanding, and she would console me a little bit if I was overstressed. But I would just recommend that you reach out to anyone that you feel close to and just have a conversation with them once a month. You could treat it as a therapy session, or treat it as I want to get to know you session better. Opportunities, they'll keep you on their radar more often for other things like scholarship opportunities or just other volunteer opportunities, or programs, summer programs, I think life after medical school. But I wish there was more minority faculty. We definitely did not have minority faculty, and I don't know how it's changed at Stritch, but I love that both Isabel and I are on faculty, because I think we both lacked that during our training, and I think that's something every school needs to work on, and that's a whole other topic for a different panel discussion. But I'll let Isabel chime in now.
Yeah, I'll just agree with what Ray said. Reach out to people. Don't there is no shame. There's nothing that you have to be ashamed of, right? And as soon as you realize that, it's easier said than done. And I think you open yourself up to just being like, hey, I need this, or looking for different ways to not buy all. I mean, do people still read textbooks? I think I thought you had to do that MS 1 year, and then I stopped, but not feeling you have to buy textbooks, not feeling you have to buy everything brand new. Talk to your classmates, because especially the upperclassmen, when it gets time to I think you guys are all mixed in here, right? But when it gets time for step 1, ask people for the resources that they use and see if they still have it. So you don't always have to buy the $1,000 prep course. I mean, sometimes you do. A lot of times people that have gone before you have that information. I remember the Adobe suite that I used to take all of my notes in all of medical school. Nikita, she was a year or two above me. I don't remember. I don't know if you know Ray, but she,
2 years.
Her? 2 years, right? She was I'm not advocating for you to steal things, but I don't know how she had all these programs. That Adobe suite was I don't know, probably $1 million, probably not $1 million, but I have no idea. It was really expensive, and she got it for free, right? And so have no shame in asking for what you need. And it's not to say people owe you things or that they should give you things for free, but they will help you. There are textbooks. I don't know if they're, what was that place called with Josh? It was the Academic Support Center, where they're go ahead.
ACE.
Yeah.
ACE. Yeah.
They have notes, they have textbooks, they have things that you can borrow. I mean, there are resources that you might not know about because the majority of the Stritch students don't need them, right? And so once you start investigating, there are resources there. And just to kind of close on this, for sure, find your people. Your people don't have to be fly students. They don't have to be minority students. They just have to be your humans, right? And so whoever those humans are that you feel comfortable being around, find them, hold on to them, because they're going to get you through everything in med school. And then I guess I'll say, nah, that's a whole different topic, but I guess we can kind of segue into mentorship unless anyone has a question right now.
I was just going to chime in, Isabel. I think that's weird. Find your people is a beautiful catchphrase. I love that, because find your people is, someone that people that support you both like academically and emotionally, which may not be the same thing as well. You may find different people. I had different people support me for my sanity, for surviving at Stritch, usually the minorities. And then, usually I had some like non-minorities that had a lot of insight into, test taking, and not that minorities do not, because some of my minority friends definitely had way better insight than others that are the non-minorities. But there was, you find some of the crap that happens, honestly. There's just a lot of crap that happens that you're just like, how do you have answers to all these tests? Like things like that. Like, it's a secret. So so if you tap into those, you'll be like, okay, you won't feel as bad. Because even if you don't want to use it, which, entirely to you, you don't have to feel bad if you don't use it for getting, an 80 when everyone, when the average was an 86, because, a lot of people had the test questions already answered. So like just tapping, knowing your resources, finding your people that you trust and that would help you along the way, is really important.
Yeah. I think for mentoring, upperclassmen can definitely, upper-class humans, I guess we should call them, so we don't gender everything. They can definitely help you. If you are at all thinking of a specialty, and I was undecided until the end of third year, it was really nerve-wracking. Just reach out to people. You will find faculty members that like mentoring medical students, and then they will help you. And then sometimes some of the mentors that you have in different specialties, like for example, I thought I was going to be an OB-GYN. And so I had 2 OB-GYN mentors that were wonderful, wonderful humans. And I ended up not going, I ended up being in ER, right? So just like find faculty members that are interested in working with you to expose yourself to whatever specialty you're going into, or you think you might be going into, because by the time it, comes to like developing your application, you would have already had like so many hours like shadowing people and like being more involved. And that's how you get pulled into research projects or volunteer clinics or whatever it is, right? So people have these connections sometimes because they're legacy students or because they were, I don't know, whatever people do that have access to healthcare before they're actually in medical school, like whatever they do, they have these connections sometimes. And so like try to forge that for yourself so that you can set yourself up nicely for what's to come, like the match.
I did want to chime in on the whole money thing. So money is, I think we talked about it briefly, but money is important. I don't care about money. I used to be one of the most frugal people you ever meet. I have a lot of debt, and I'm not afraid to tell you guys. I took out about $400,000 of debt, and I have a lot of debt, and I found ways to pay it off. I'm paying it off still, but it's definitely not done. But no matter what specialty you go into, you're going to have a lot of pressure on yourself, around you, your family, to pick the specialty that pays well. Do not let that guide you. No matter what you go into, you'll make a lot of money, especially if you're good at it and if you love it. So whether it's emergency medicine, family, pediatrics, which is the lowest paying, you're gonna make a lot of money. Like when I chose family medicine, it was mostly for global health, for the global health training. But I loved emergency medicine. I love surgery. They pay differently, but like you can make a lot of money in whatever field you want. So you're gonna be a doctor. Like you're not gonna be poor. So no matter what, you'll pay off your debt, no matter how much you took on. Because there's tons of programs, and I'm happy to chime in on this. There's a lot of way to balance your finances, to invest, to focus on your retirement funds, to participate in loan repayment programs, such as plethora of refinancing your loan. You will be okay. So do not ever let money determine your specialty. Like what Isabel was saying, like find mentors and find what drives you, find what wakes you up in the morning, and go with that. Because if you're good at something, people are going to pay you very well to do it, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And I have to go. I'm sorry, guys. So I'm already at work, and it was. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. So sorry, Isabel. I'll let you take it from here.
No, that's fine. Have a good shift.
That's okay.
Right,
Thank
bye,
you
guys.
so much for Dr. Mendez. We appreciate your time.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, you're going to have plenty of money, but at the same time, I do think it's important. Like my family wasn't very financially literate, which I think is like very important. So they don't own stock, they didn't have an accountant, nothing like that. So I've had to learn a lot about what it means to take care of money. You're going to take out a lot of debt. You're going to take out a lot of loans. I have more loans than the average student. I don't actually know the amount, otherwise I'd be transparent about it, because it just like literally makes me like a little nauseous. But at the same time, like I know I'm going to pay it off. It's around 300, I think. But I've met with financial advisors. I've had to learn how to take care of money, because I grew up taking care of money by not spending it, right? It's a lot more complicated than that. So I would encourage you to at least, just think about it. You don't need to be like a master budgeter or accountant if that's not you, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind that you will have money at some day and you will have to know how to handle that, which is not necessarily easy. Yeah.
Awesome. The other question we had was, I know that you said you switched into ED, just kind of like how you realized that that's what was the thing, that was the thing for you. And also like how your transition has been as an intern and onward. Yeah.
Yeah. So I chose emergency medicine because it's the best specialty in the whole wide world, and you should all be emergency medicine doctors. No, I mean, I chose it because I actually love it. And I think you'll find that in third year, you're either going to hate a lot of things and love a few things, or you're going to kind of love everything, and you'll just have to decide, what you love the most. And so I kind of fell into the last category. I really liked everything except neurology, because it's hard and I don't want to talk about it. But I realized that in every little thing that I was doing, I liked the acute care aspects of it. So in OB-GYN, I really loved the crash C-sections, or I didn't love when people got eclampsia, but I was like, oh, what do we do in this moment? And the same thing with family medicine. I really liked the fast-paced clinic, or at least I thought I did. But when you're in charge of clinic and making sure it runs smoothly, that's very stressful, and so I can't handle it. So I realized that the common themes that I liked were in emergency medicine, and then more importantly, I really like the patient population in emergency medicine, and so. Obviously, a lot of different ERs are distinct, right? So the type of patient population that that I really like to work with is what I call county-like or underserved. So I trained in a big county hospital in Atlanta. The University of Chicago sees a South Side population, and so I've always wanted to work with underserved populations. And early on, I thought that meant that I had to do a primary care specialty. So I thought, oh, maybe family medicine, realized I wasn't a family medicine doctor. And then they're angels, by the way. Like Ray Mendez is an angel, right? So like all the props in the world to primary care. And then I thought, oh, well, I can do OB. It's a little bit more procedural. I like procedures. And then I realized that it's not procedural. They're surgeons. They're like legit surgeons. And so you got to want to be a surgeon if you're going to be an OB-GYN. And I have no patience for that. So can't do that either. And then emergency medicine was a nice blend of all that. And so I can still see the patient population that I want to see, still be a proceduralist, and still do like a mix of everything. Kind of forgot what other parts of the question were, but I only learned that after spending a lot of time with a lot of different doctors. It wasn't like I came into the ER. That's not true. The first day of my ER rotation, I like loved it. It was amazing, and then I was sold. But yeah. And in terms of transitioning into intern year from Loyola, you are so well prepared. And I know that you hear that, but it's very true. We were reading EKGs as MS2s, is it, or MS1 even in PCM? I think your curriculum may have changed a little bit, but the amount of clinical preparation that you have as a Loyola student is remarkable. You obviously know the material because you have to check those boxes. You have to pass step 1, which I don't think has anything to do with medicine, but here we are, right? You have to pass step 2, you have to pass all your shelf exams. That's stuff, obviously, it, so did the rest of the medical students in the country, but the clinical training that you get at Loyola is literally second to none, and I cannot stress that. I was at Loyola when we didn't have a residency program in emergency medicine, and somehow that year, Dr. Reed and Dr. Lovett and Dr. Barba, as he had just gotten hired, they matched 27 people into emergency medicine in 1 year. And I think most of those people went to like one of their top 3 choices. And I think that just speaks volume to the clinical training that you'll have. And then just because I think I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself, but I think you'll realize when you only need one residency program to say yes, first of all, right? But you do have a choice. So when you make that rank list, you can determine what kind of surroundings you want and what type of patients you want to be around and what type of colleagues you want, which I think is really important to remember.
Yeah, that's really comforting and, good thing to keep in mind, especially as an M3. At the end of the day, like, obviously you're trying to impress these people, but from what I hear, like, the residencies are also trying to impress you.
Oh yeah.
So,
We are in so I do a lot of the residency interviews and stuff like that, and we are in the middle of trying to court you guys. We were really hard to impress you, and so don't forget that, right? Like,
yeah. So I did have a question. I'll just read it off. How did you decide how tight of a budget you needed during medical school, especially if you found that there was little wiggle room with loans? For example, some classmates live by themselves in nice Oak Park apartments, which would be great, but I'm stuck feeling like I shouldn't be spending that much for the sake of ease or comfort.
so this is where things get tricky, right? I was very fortunate that my roommates that I had were very easy to live with, right? And you will see that there will be people that are like, oh, I have a cleaning lady or cleaning person come, twice a month, and I get all my meals delivered, and I live in this beautiful apartment. They can do that because of money, right? Money is the underlying current. So I chose the things that I needed that were non-negotiables. So for me, I needed a place next to Stritch, right? I didn't want to, my car wasn't really one that you could drive all the time on the highway. So I needed a place next to Stritch. And then I needed to make sure that I did what I gave myself little concessions. So I studied a lot at Stritch. And so if I wasn't at home, I was okay getting takeout. So takeout is a bit more expensive, but it made my life easier. So I feel like you have to find a balance of understanding that you don't have all the resources that your classmates might have, but that you have to give yourself something. Med school is hard. So you have to find whatever that something is, whether that's more takeout and not as many groceries, or whether that is that cleaning company, or maybe it's like you penny pinch and then you're able to go away somewhere for like a week off. Whatever it is that gets you through, I want to give you guys the agency to do that, because as a poor kid, it took a lot for me to learn that I could spend money to make my life better. But you have to be way more careful about it than other classmates. I don't know if that answers the question.
They didn't respond, but I think it did. I do have another one, also financially related. Can you explain what your experience was like working with a financial advisor? How did you find one? When did you first meet? And what was the experience like?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if Loyola does this, but they actually invited a financial advisor to come speak to us. I think they were through Northwestern Mutual. And these are people that basically work straight with doctors. And it was the first time I'd ever heard about it. And that was in fourth year, when basically they sat us in a room and were like, hey, your loans are capitalizing every day. Everything is terrible. Here's a financial advisor. So I met with him about 3 times. And he basically just had me set up a budget, and then had I continued meeting with him, we would have set up all these different types of accounts for where my money went. I kind of fell off of meeting with him just because we didn't really quite jive, but currently I'm in the process of working with another advisor, and this person has been, like, tons of my friends have utilized their services, and so I feel a bit more comfortable, and I feel like we're kind of at the same wavelength of what we want. Something that I will tell you is a lot of people will do your finances for free as a medical student. So just look for that, right? Because they know that when you become a attending, you're going to have a lot of money and you'll probably trust them with your money. So you shouldn't really be paying for financial services here at where you are at this stage. And I'm kind of keeping it a little cryptic because I don't want to like endorse anybody, because I'm not the person to do that. But I would just tell you that, like, you can search for somebody and they'll do it for free. And if you know someone that has a financial advisor, that might be a great way to start, because they can also advise you on things like disability insurance and stuff that I had no idea existed. So if you're an MS before, you should reach out to your colleagues or start Googling how to do that.
Sweet. Yeah, I definitely recommend talking openly with classmates about money. Don't feel bad about it. I mean, that's how people learn. But obviously, I don't know as much as an M3. I'm going to open this up to any other questions. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. Oh, I did get another one. Sorry. For someone who is interested in EM as a minority moving through the wards 3rd and 4th year, did you ever feel like you didn't get the clinical grades you deserved? How did that impact you and your decisions when applying for residency?
So there is a lot in that question, so I'm going to try to tackle it as well as I can. So the first part is a minority moving through the wards. How do you think that impacted you? I think it impacts you like it kind of always does. And I don't mean to sound somber or anything, but I think we know that unfortunately implicit or explicit bias is very real. And I always think back to my surgery rotation where I rotated with like 2 white males and they were amazing. And in the OR, the surgeon would talk to them about like baseball stats and football and like all this stuff. And then when it was my turn to scrub, he'd be like, so what is the approach? What anatomy are we in? And it was like a total 180, total different experience. And that was maybe the most flagrant example of that. And I'd love to be like, call that shit out, do it right away. But I understand that in an MS3 and an MS4, your grade is on the line and your grade is unfortunately your future. I do want to empower you to reach out to someone that you trust. Your deans, any faculty members that you trust. And if you don't feel like you want to go on the line for that, then report it anonymously because that stuff isn't going to stop unless someone says something, right? So I think there's that. I think this is where it's really important to have those mentors, right? And they don't have to look like you or be of the same background of you, but as just someone that you trust that can be an advocate for you if things happen or can at least coach you on what to do, right? And I will always say this, like, I felt like I was just going to study twice as hard and work twice as hard to, get the same grades. And that's just like, unfortunately, where we're at, right? But I don't know, like Stacy said, works hard so that she knows, sorry, Stacy Abrams, I love her so much. Oh, anyways, she says, I work hard so that I know what I'm talking about, right? And that's kind of how I live my life. And I talk so much that I kind of lost the rest of the question. Sorry.
I think you answered most of it. Let's see. I guess like if any of your experiences, like as a minority in those situations, like impacted your decision when applying for residency.
Yes, absolutely. Not necessarily my experiences at Loyola. Like I said, I think for the most part, I had like a very positive experience at Loyola. But I think I realized in residency that I wanted to be a certain type of doctor. And the doctor that I wanted to be mostly worked with underserved populations, and I did not want to be the only person of color in my residency program. I knew that. And so when I chose residency programs, I'm gonna be real open with you guys. I literally opened a web browser, looked at the program picture, and counted the number of minorities. That doesn't make the program, right? Like just because they have a high number of minorities doesn't mean it's the program for you, but it just at least puts, if not being the only one is important to you, I think it is okay that that is important to you, right? And so all of my programs that I ranked highly did have very diverse classes, and then more importantly did have an underserved population. And they were typically like, I trained mostly like no one was insured, or if they were insured, they were through the county hospital. It was mostly a Black population, a lot of undocumented individuals that were Latinx. And so, and a lot of people with substance use history. And that's the program that I wanted to be at because that's the type of doctor I wanted to learn to be. And so just realize that, well, let me be real. First, you need a program. And if that program is in the middle of nowhere, I don't want to call it a state because I don't want to offend anybody, but in a place that like doesn't really have minorities, and like that sucks, and that's the only program that you get. But at the end of the day, you'll be able to call yourself a doctor. That's awesome, right? But two, you can try to manipulate your list in a way where you don't have to be the only person of color in the room.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna allow for one more question, just be respectful of your time and everyone's here. So does anyone else have something that they're dying to ask? I know we did ask quite a bit. Okay, so this will be our last one. If you feel comfortable sharing, what was your experience with family members who may not understand the challenges of medical school?
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that that is a big, big part of this experience as being first generation. It was hard. You feel like you're constantly having to defend your absence because even though speaking personally, my family was very supportive, very, very supportive. But I don't think they realized that when I said I couldn't come home because I had an exam, it was literally because an exam isn't something that you study for in 2 days. An exam is like a whole week long visual, like several IBS flares, right? So they have no idea what you're going through. And it was constantly just teaching them, right? Just saying, hey, I just need to do this. And so in some ways you do have to be selfish, which can feel like you're turning your back on your people. But I just want to give you the agency to do that, to set boundaries, right? Because if you go home, if you're able to go home, so something that I did, right? What I struck a balance was I would say, Mom, I'm going home, but I'm going to stay in the basement and no one can talk to me from the hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then I'll come out and hang out. And I'm intense, so you don't have to do that, right? But if you set up a way that works for your family and you, and then they finally learned that I literally meant like, no one can talk to me. So I think it's just realizing that they don't understand and no one understands. I feel like even if, unless your family members went to medical school or did some sort of intensive grad school, doesn't matter how much money they have, they're probably not going to understand. So just realize that I think that we deal with this on a different level because sometimes our backgrounds are immigrant backgrounds or whatever, right? And family means a lot of different things. And before I get into trouble, I'll like stop. But I think the most important thing is realizing that it's hard and that it's going to be uncomfortable, but you have to sit down and have a conversation with them because they don't want you to fail, but it can feel you are absent. So something that I did that my then boyfriend, now husband, kind of made me do was he would make me set aside an hour a week to talk to family. And I know that sounds like not enough, but like a consistent hour a week to call my family, I think helped repair a lot of the hurt feelings that I had because I became so immersed in med school, which isn't helpful for you or them, that I didn't appreciate them enough. And so it's a balance. I know I'm talking in circles, but you just have to find your own way and you have to be selfish, but you also have to include them. And then we can talk about once you start making money, how family might not understand that just because you got money doesn't mean you can pay for everything. But we don't have to go there. And my family doesn't do that. And that's amazing. But anyways, I'm rambling.
No, not at all. This has been amazing. Okay, so I think that is, all the questions for now. I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. Honestly, like it's inspirational to hear other FLI students succeeding. And in fact, I got a message from one of the students saying that this was a healing experience for them. And that's exactly what we wanted to have out of this. And so, is it okay if we have any other questions? I can just email you.
Yeah, that's totally
Okay.
fine, guys. And like you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Ray, that's totally fine. And then just like remember, being where you are is already an accomplishment and it might look different, but that doesn't mean it's any less valuable. And don't let people convince you that it is, because it takes a while to get that out of your brain. But like seriously, you earn the right to be where you are. You don't get to be in med school by like not doing the work. So you did the work, you did extra work, you're going to continue to do extra work, but it is worth it if this is what you want to do and you are like more than capable. And then you're like, I think you can be a little bit more empathetic too for your patient.
Totally. And it's nice to hear from another Stritch alum.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you everyone. And thanks, to everyone who showed up. I know a lot of us spend a lot of time on Zoom. And so getting people to come to events is rough. But thank you again. All right. I hope you guys have a good evening.